Mouldering quietly away where the counties of Suffolk and Norfolk meet, stands a few scant flint and stone walls, surrounded by an occasionally flooded moat, which is all that is left of a 12th century manor house built by a man of Norman descent called Hugh de Play. The moat was added as a decorative feature in the 13th century, as it was then a fashion statement of the day. Although not fortified, this substantial high-status domestic dwelling displayed architectural features typically found in castles of the period. It was, I suppose, a homage to resemble the hall at Castleacre Castle, which Hugh's feudal lord Hamelin de Warren owned. Erroneously called, perhaps, Weeting Castle, it fell into decay in the late 14th century after it passed to Sir John Howard, the Earl of Norfolk, through his marriage to Margaret Play. There were no male heirs, and Sir John had no use for it except for salvaging parts of the house to be repurposed elsewhere. In later centuries, the ruins formed an ornamental feature on the grounds of nearby Weeting Hall from 1770 onwards, and during this time the hall built a domed building to store its winter ice from the moat, and that building was called the Ice House and still sits at the edge of the manor ruins today. The hall passed to the ownership of the state in 1926, but that too was later demolished in the mid-1950s, and the housing estate now stands on site. By the time of the English Civil War, the Weeting ruins were allegedly used for target practice by Cromwell's army, who were camped on the nearby Bronze Age tumulus, now called Pepper's High Hill, and from where the ruins were peppered with cannon shots. Some claim the ruins was being defended by forces loyal to the king. There is a fictionalised account by Charles Kingsley of Weeting Castle during the era of the Norman Conquest, in which the mythical Saxon freedom fighter Hereward the Wake visited William the Conqueror's camp there. The flaw to this story is that during this period the site existed 100-odd years later. And on the subject of Saxons, Anglo or otherwise, pottery has been found dating from the 9th century, which would suggest an earlier fortification of village. Despite a peaceful past, the site has attracted a haunted activity. Primarily strange mists, disembodied voices, orbs and ethereal light anomalies both in and around the ruins and the ice house. A couple claim to have encountered the infamous Black Shook while walking around the castle's moat. W.A. Dutt described the Black Shook in his 1901 Highways and Byways in East Anglia as thus:
"He takes the form of a huge black dog and prowls along dark lanes and lonesome field footpaths, where, although his howling makes the hearer's blood run cold, his footfalls make no sound. You may know him at once, should you see him, by his fiery eye. He has but one, and that, like the Cyclops, is in the middle of his head. But such an encounter might bring you the worst of luck. It is even said that to meet him is to be warned that your death will occur before the end of the year. So you will do well to shut your eyes if you hear him howling. Shut them even if you are uncertain whether it is the dog fiend or the voice of the wind you hear. Should you never set eyes on our Norfolk Snarlew, you may perhaps doubt his existence and, like other learned folks, tell us that his story is nothing but the old Scandinavian myth of the Black Hound of Odin, brought to us by the Vikings who long ago settled down on the Norfolk coast."
Many people have spoken of mists that appear even on the driest of nights. Some of these misty figures have appeared in human form, which undoubtedly adds intrigue to the spiritual events. Additionally, paranormal investigators have caught EVP on camera, particularly within the moated ruin. As the ruins are surrounded by an expanse of flat open farmland, there is more often than not a breeze or wind of some description blowing through the ruins. One night I was with a group when we all heard faintly on the wind the voice of someone calling for help.
What was that? I just heard that. Help!
Some shout, yeah.
Somebody say help. I heard.
Yeah, I did as well.
Or hello.
It's either help or
And it sounded. I heard someone say help.
No, I heard help. Just be quiet, just be quiet. And on one famous occasion, Eddie Mallet, a member of that team, actually caught a child on camera saying Seraphim. There have been 2 reported incidents of walkers to the ruins during the twilight hours, and here are their accounts.
I had a perchance to visit Weeting Hall on some business with the resident Angerstein family, when I had the opportunity to spend some free time as their guest exploring on the estate, some rather dilapidated stonework surrounded by a moat which I was given to understand was once a castle of some description built during the medieval period. I was there no more than 40 minutes when I decided to head back. It was getting dark, and I did not have a lantern, so I went from the ruins to an entrenchment across the moat and towards the nearby church. Before I reached this crossing point, I heard quite distinctly in the air a faint but discernible voice of a child, saying something not entirely clear enough for me to understand. I naturally turned to look and saw with my very eyes a most odd mist sweeping across the stonework of what looked to be a tall flintstone wall. What made it strange was that it was a dry summer day and not damp enough for this effect to occur. This left me feeling somewhat unsettled, and I later reported my observations to the staff at the hall. I was made aware that such activity was not uncommon there, and they suggested the area was haunted and that very few staff went there at night. Suffice to say, I never returned. John L. Cochran, 1862.
When I was a kid, my family first visited the ruins at Weeting Castle. I was disappointed as it didn't meet my expectations as a castle. All I remembered from then was some boring old stonework. Anyway, I returned there years later with some friends as we were in the area, and just for a laugh we went to see if it was haunted as they claimed it was. It was around 10 o'clock at night when we had not seen anything of any interest, so we decided to up sticks and leave. Just as we were heading towards the entrance, we all saw a black shadow. I couldn't say what it was, but it was in front as we shone our torches. Really odd to see a black shadow in the dark and clearly visible from the beam of our lights. We didn't hang around after that and cleared off. That was 20 years ago, and I'll never forget that night. Harry Brigshaw.
There is no doubt that Weeting Castle, despite its rather obscure past, has a serious sense of the haunting about it. And I have absolutely no doubt that this will continue for years to come. And who knows, maybe one of us will be haunting that site. But anyway, until another time, thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this show, please hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't already done so, and of course hit the bell icon for any fresh updates.